I first started writing poetry when I was really young. I found poems backdated from when I was like 10.
I first started writing first year of university, I think, 2010, as a sleep aid, get things out of my head.
Before it was kind of more sort of a cathartic thing, and gradually it's kind of been more of a craft that I've tried to have that, as well as something that I turn to in times of need and that kind of thing.
I was a really angry, sad kid, so I was writing a lot of this anguish emo poetry, and it was never seen by anybody. But then I started writing songs and doing music, and so arguably there's a lot of lyrics there, which only recently I've been deciding can turn into proper pieces of poetry.
Song lyrics was probably what I used to scribble down most. They were very rhymey, they were very juvenile. I'd like to think that the style I've developed now, I started this maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
There's a row of whiteboards in the arrivals hall. Jet-lagged families and well-thumbed travellers trudge sloppy through automatic doors. We still have far to go. This is our final call. This is our plane delay. Welcome to Britain. Enter through customs and trip straight into a custom-built system, one that you have no say in, despite the fact you are a good tax-paying slave to the nation. Tell me, what is it you want us to declare?
I started writing comedy, but then I didn't like the scene so much. Found the poetry scene to be a lot more inspiring, and a lot more ideas happened.
I really feel like I should have gone to open mic nights so much earlier in my life. I only recently started.
Yeah, just sort of started noticing how many open mic nights there are in London. There's a lot of open mic nights in London.
I went to one Apples and Snakes open mic night, or maybe a couple at the Poetry Cafe as well. I had a brilliant time and then got terrified because I thought I was rubbish, and then I didn't go back to anything again for 2.5 years.
First open mic I went to was James Messiah's speaking in the Bussy building in Peckham, and it was great. I think it was mostly open mic, and it was really just, all sorts of different people there that seemed like they'd never done a open mic before.
My first open mic that I read at was back in Melbourne, Australia. It was an event called Voices in the Attic that a friend had invited me along to, and I went and I was just blown away.
I got dragged along to Lip Tink in Covent Garden, and I had an absolutely amazing time, and yeah, I've never looked back since.
I remembered about it, and then I went back to the Poetry Cafe to Unplugged, I think it was my first one, and was like, no, yeah, this is awesome. But yeah, I got really scared for no reason for 2.5 years. Wasted years.
I used to go to a lot of open mic nights where I would be maybe the only poet there. I used to go to a lot of musical gigs. I'd be up against comedians, stand-ups, sometimes full bands, and there'd always be a kind of 2-minute gap, and I'd have to say, look, I'm a poet. And it was maybe a bit embarrassing at first, but then I started going to Just Poetry nights in London, and it's a lot more friendly there, I think.
Yes. Okay, let's do it. I guess if I'm going to an open mic night, I think friendly is really important. That word springs to mind.
When I started out, there was quite a lot of sort of machismo and swagger, and I'd turn up with my feminist sarcastic rhymes and be like, I'm not sure if they're going to like this at all. So I think, yeah, a friendly night, an open, kind of warm, open-hearted night.
I quite like it when it's music as well. Spliced in between poetry. I think just like 3 hours of poetry can get a bit dead, so I look for sort of variation.
Some One thing I do look for is an open space, and I'm sure a lot of people would say the same.
If I know that it's a night that's made comfortable for people from all backgrounds, then it's going to be an interesting one because people have different stories.
They have to be fairly well run because no one likes not knowing when it's starting and when you're going on, and it has to be nice.
We're going for myself a little one way, getting kind of tired of this rat race. This is a keepsake, I don't want to keep safe anymore.
A good open mic, firstly, runs to time. I think quite often you want to get in as many people as possible, and people, you want to hear most of people.
Organisation is actually really important. I know that sounds really stupid, but running a night myself, I feel like people have the most fun, and I have the most fun when it is organised.
When I go into an open mic night and I feel like the audience is actually encouraged to participate or exclaim or be present rather than just sitting there in mute deference, I think that's always really nice.
Like going into a place, and even if you've never been there before and you only know like maybe one or two people, it's just like a warmth. Like there's a really good vibe like with the crowd.
I mean, we can talk about stuff like features and how long you get as an open mic set, but really what makes an open mic night is always going to be the people.
I think it's just as much about the people in the room who are the audience members who go just to listen as it is about the people who make up the poetry night who want to read their work.
I like the plurality of open mic nights. I like that you get like a variety of different voices represented that you don't get in a lot of other, say, mainstreamized forms of entertainment.
And I like the fact that people who perform are very open, they're very, they can be really sincere, and they say what's really relevant to them.
What scares you? What keeps you awake at night? Is it monsters in the fading light? Do you feel the fear that vampires are near? Are there spiders in your dark? Maybe what scares you is closer to your heart. Maybe you get scared talking to their face as your tongue trips its grace. Maybe you're scared you'll end up alone. You've waited so long for love, it's eating what's waiting. You've almost forgot. Or maybe what truly scares you is Iggy Azalea.
I think audience members like being able to see into people's souls, and there's something amazing, like even if there's a poem that you don't particularly like, to see that person be able to express themselves is a hugely great thing.
I think audiences go because generally and genuinely they enjoy poetry.
I think a lot of people go to see how other people are doing it, to get involved, to meet people who like the same stuff as them, and also because we are all poets, and because poetry nights tend to be in bars and there's alcohol available.
Most of the poetry events happen in places where there are quite cheap drinks, and we know that people like to drink, and so that's the thing. People go out to drink, and it's nice sometimes to have something to watch while you drink.
To be honest, the ones that I am big fans of are returning audience members are very much 60-40, 70-30% poets. So they're the people who also want to get up and share and talk as well, and if they are feeling that it's really welcoming, then they come back every month. So I think that's because it's such a good opportunity to share stuff.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are grey. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Goodness help you. We were milk-teeth young when the sun set on your mother, and we were unable to understand the concept of real, hard-boiled grief. You were too weather-worn to dab dry the despair from your sodden clothes soaked right through. You did your absolute best, and I never really grasped that until sickness slipped under the silk of your skin.
To have a nice one-way conversation, to have like a room of people who are like duty-bound within social boundaries to sit down and listen to you.
For me, I tend to go to poetry nights because there's nothing quite like the buzz of it, both being in the audience and being up on stage and performing.
They're never the same. people always have the capacity to be surprised and to surprise others and themselves.
It's a good way to drag someone in and embrace them in the family.
I think it's fun to hear people's stories. Everyone's a bit nosy, aren't they? So everyone wants to learn a little bit about you, and they get to do that by listening to poems.
Your mind is an escalator of the women who will not match up. You take Saviour to the breastplates and ask them to dance for you. I held your head every time they took a misstep. When you would shatter them in your hands because they were made of the wrong materials, their seams were threaded with your hopes until you'd realise the texture was all wrong. You wanted anything other than the brow of your father. But it was always his face that stared back at you, doorstep below the forehead that stopped you looking like your sister, that made your mother count the days until you'd leave. You brought still photographs of him to life in that glass fragment seconds before you hit the mirror so hard you cracked your knuckles. And I held them together for you.
I love going to open mics sometimes just to, not to perform, just to listen to people talk.
I think that if you were a poet who never listened to or never read any other poetry, but just constantly listening to your own stuff, you'd never ever develop as an artist. So I think one of the primary roles of it is to listen to poetry and then to get your own stuff out there to perform as well.
It's the same as reading. If you're not reading enough, your writing will weaken. If you're not going to events and you're not watching what other people are doing and you're not learning and you're not giving yourself inspiration, then I don't think you can progress as a writer yourself. I think you do need time where you sit and be an audience member to know what you can give the audience.
Do you read articles? You should read articles on your smartphone or your tablet. Do you have a tablet? You should buy a tablet, one with storage. Download some productivity apps and some podcasts. Listen to some podcasts on your tablet. You write every day. You should. In your notebook or on your laptop, and you should save your writing in folders, and the folders can be labelled and organised. You could write about what you read in the articles, then it would be relevant.
It is about that connection. It's about the immediacy of being in a room. You can't just curl up in bed with a notebook. If you want to see what London is doing, if you want to see what the poetry scene is doing, you have to go out and you have to find something. You have to go to a tiny cafe, you have to go underground, you have to go to a theatre, you have to go outside, you have to go to where the people are speaking, you have to go there and you have to find it.
It's a much more novel way of entertainment. I think everybody knows about plays, everybody knows about concerts, but far less people know about open mic nights, and that sort of mysteriousness contributes a lot to why people might want to go. There's a novelty effect that can attract people as well.
Sometimes I've chatted to a few people at places like the Poetry Cafe, and they literally just know it because it says Poetry Cafe on the front, and they're like, oh, this might be a little bit different. I could spend my evening like watching some free music or in a bar, or I could like have a drink and watch this. Why not? And I think that's quite nice. Apparently poetry is becoming more popular like music rather than just this dead society thing that it had been years before.
I wish I was still a virgin. I wish I didn't commit the carnal sin. I wish I didn't meet her and she weren't so pretty. I wish I didn't take her BB pin. I wish I didn't bars her till her heart gave in. I wish she didn't invite me over when her mum went in. I wish I didn't close my eyes, bite my lip, take a deep breath and slide it in. You see, sex, it's a powerful thing. I've heard people say they wish they could bottle the feeling with the widest grin, but it's more likely to put you in a tin, cause you see, sex, it's a powerful thing.
I think the topic of openness is vital and really tricky.
I think it's really important that people feel like anything goes at an open mic night. And having said that, I think it's really important that people respect that in the world, not everything goes, and that's the same in art.
You can't do, in my opinion, you can't do a filtering system. If you're gonna have an open mic, you have to be completely open.
Freedom of speech is obviously it's huge, and I think that reflects in poetry, so we should be able to say whatever we like. Having said that, there are rules in society about what we can and can't say.
So if you want the stuff that is really emotionally raw, then you're going to need to open the floodgates, which can trickle through some things that people might not be ready to hear or appreciate hearing, but it's you've got to take the good with the bad, the salt with the sugar.
I think that's obviously what you're going for. You want a welcome atmosphere, and there are things that people might not say that you want people to be able to feel they can say. That doesn't mean that people should go and say, use it as an excuse.
Just the same as in real life. You wouldn't stand for racism or sexism or whatever, or homophobia. You wouldn't stand for that. So as long as it's understood that we can say what we like, but just don't be a dick.
The other day I was walking down a streetcar when 3 strangers spat embers shaped like words. These spiteful tags were heavy bags of verbal groceries that I carried home with me, only to swallow them like a fire eater. For the letters singed my throat with S-L-U-T, with W-H-O-R-E. These words define my sexuality. It's all about how I stand, how I dance. It's cake-faced chicken fillets, leggings aren't pants. It's feminism defined by repetitive rants. It's a group of people treated like ants. A society burns with their spectacles, using mirrors to create a spectacle. Forget Burning Man, let's watch girls become flames until ash and pain are all that remains. A carcass of femininity identified by shame. When will we stop using female sexuality as a slur? When will the word cunt be celebrated, the stigma castrated? When will my body stop being public art? Will the fire cease? Will the rain start to wash away the dirt from terms like hussy, pussy, tramp? You see, I'm trying to reclaim these phrases as a compliment, a stamp that says my body is a gift, not a penalty or prize. It cannot be paid for in currency or eyes. And no matter how I use it, how I move it, what I wear, my sensuality is not a fire. It's a warmth I've learned to share.
I love the fact that somebody can just roll in off the street and perform something absolutely mind-blowing that you didn't know you were going to see that day.
The openness of the open mic is what's made me feel so much more comfortable and excited to be more involved, actually.
Essentially, speaking poetry has to be done in a safe space, as poets are coming in with very personal stories. And if they feel like they're going to be judged for something they might say, then it makes them feel vulnerable.
I think when you get to the stage where an open mic isn't open, you've sort of lost the point.
I guess I could conceptualise a world in which you wouldn't need it to be at all. But I think for it to maintain the diversity of voices that I think makes it really powerful, the sort of demographic model in which you can say whatever you want to say, like freedom of speech. And that's not to say you can say anything uncriticised, because part of freedom of speech is also that somebody could go up and do a poem, and somebody else could do up a poem criticising that person, and that's having that conversation that is really important.
Shithead Bingo, a game for hostile work environments. Step 1, create your Shithead Bingo card. Select your targets from stereotypes and disadvantaged groups. The elderly, sex workers, ethnic minorities, fat people, thin people, women with small tits, people on benefits, female drivers, child abuse survivors. This is your Shithead Bingo card. Create this card in your head. You don't want a note lying around that looks like the Brixton Bombers to-do list.
When you have an open platform, it's easy to believe that everybody's voice will get heard equally, but that's actually not how life works. So it's important that all nights continue, and those nights catered for people who, quite frankly, won't get listened to and don't get listened to in normal society, have their space, have their platform.
And I think there is a certain culture in London sometimes of a celebration of the ability to say anything, which I don't know how much that helps the poetry itself. But I also think it's wonderful and important. So it's a thin line.
I think what's really important, if you look at nights like Forget What You Heard and Spoken Word London, is the inclusivity of it.
If the open mics weren't open, then I wouldn't be part of the scene, and the London scene would miss all this. And I know you'd be upset about that.
So then you get other nights where like only specific people who have been asked can perform, and it kind of loses its those nights kind of lose a kind of openness that open mics have.
The material that is generated is going to be a lot more accessible and a lot more real and more raw if the poets themselves are comfortable within that space. Otherwise, why are we all doing it?
This one I think I'm gonna do is about a really unbelievable guy that I met on my way home, and sometimes you've got to write poetry about that shit, so to the guy who asked me, how much? Oh, it gets better. sorry that I felt the need for some clarification. But you see, in this consumer nation, you'd surely appreciate the confusion. Thing is, I was stupidly under the illusion that I looked like a human being, not a fucking shop. But
I think open mics are the most important events in poetry. Not to disparage all the others.
When I first was doing this, I did slams before I did open mics. I thought that they were on the same level. I didn't realise quite how competitive everything can get.
Slams are a little formulaic and a little bloodthirsty because the same type of poetry generally always wins.
Slams are very particular. They get people in the door. It's more of a bar game at the poet's expense.
I think open mic nights are where you can hear a bigger variety of things, because at a slam you're not going to want to do the quite sad one or the quite quiet one if you think that's not the one that's going to get the big applause.
They're great fun if they're done well. They can be great fun. I think an open mic can take the pressure off.
You tell me how you remember you were playing basketball when you heard that Biggie Smalls was dead. How that rubber banging rhythm tripped and died from gunshots to heartbeats to nothing. How not 6 months had passed since his counterweight was dropped. How you felt not quite relief but grim satisfaction. The coin finally coming down on a losing side. A major key resolving back to minor. You tell me you don't think either of these men ever wanted to be notorious.
It can be such a warm environment. I've met some of the nicest people I've ever known from open mic nights, and just be able to start up a conversation about something they've written or something I've written.
You can get free verse, you'll get hip hop, you'll get sonnets, you'll get stories, you'll get songs, you'll get a cappella singing, and it's the variety, I think, that makes up an open mic. It makes a brilliant open mic, is that variety.
I think they are in a way of allowing voices that wouldn't necessarily be heard. A development of voices and a conversation of topics. I think there is also a way of inclusion and exposure to the world of poetry that open mics brings.
It just gives a platform for people who, whatever their kind of ambitions are within writing, performing poetry, it just gives them a space to share their work.
It's just a place where poets can come together and tell stories and have fun and feel alive with something they might have written on a train rather than in a workshop, for instance.
Not everyone does want to kind of be a professional poet, and I think it's important to, for people to just do it for fun, really.
Don't you just hate it when all of a sudden you're reading a haiku?
It's still good. It's too good. It's too good.
And what makes it worse is when it happens again just seconds later.
Open mic nights are the centerpiece of everything that kind of works out, really, with even all those other features and all the rest of it. They really must be wouldn't have existed without having that platform.
That's the lifeblood. That's where new writers and new performers will come from. That's where a lot of people will be introduced to what performance poetry is.
I think the kind of assumption that you move on from open mics is like absolute bollocks, to be honest.
I think there are very few poets who have made it, who would have made it without the open mic scene in whatever city they started out in.
You're gonna need to have a place where people can explore and experiment. You're gonna need to have a place where people feel safe.
It's a way for you to be heard, it's a way for you to meet people, more importantly, and it's just really good fun.
I think it's great in London, the scene's great in that there's so many open mic nights. You can just go and write something and go and share it with people who are going to listen to it, and I think that's incredibly important with people who are starting to find their voice, for people, for it to be accessible to everyone.
I'm a ghetto geek, straight from the depths of the streets. I can still roll deep, combine the grime with an intelligent tweak, and drop them stone cold Jane Austen flows, and still compose a project you know is my deep. And drop them stone cold Jane Austen flows, and still compose a project you know is my deep. I got the sensibility to shake your pride and prejudices. You quote me, you better take note of me. I never shook one, but my mind's a gun. My literary artillery is running through my capillaries. So
that's the first platform for poets to get seen. That's the first way people can get seen and get known.
Open mic nights are really important to get people in, to get people with their foot in the door.
I guess open mics are kind of like the gateway drug for slams. They're much more, as again their name would suggest, they're much more open to people who are just starting off. and it again enables a more varied set of perspectives that you just might not get.
You go to an open mic, you discover that poet who is just amazing that isn't discovered yet, and you can be the one to see them and go, great, you come and do a slot, or just meet friends who are like-minded. So yeah, hugely important open mics. Don't know where we'd be without them.
Body delicately put together like the stitching of a one-away designer dress for an Oscar nominee. The type of petite figure which requires monogamy to be handled properly. Slim but top heavy, there is cash in your attic, your chest is mahogany. Ironically, you keep cash in your attic but junk in your trunk. I bargain hunt as I rummage through it properly. Supernatural gyration in the attic located at the top of your body. I am under the spell of this paranormal activity. I am under the spell of your attic, the spell of your attic, while your attic spell attic, I see you as perfect. Therefore, I spoil you accordingly, because like L'Oreal, you are worth it. You are worth your weight in gold. Wait, hold. I know that you're the one. I know that she's the one.
I think it's really important in the scene that we have open mics with feature poets and open mics without feature poets. I think both things need to be represented.
So I like having a feature poet and open mic, one or two. If it's not, it depends how you sort of market the night.
As someone who's wanting to kind of aspire to being a professional writer and poet and performer, it kind of gives you something, I guess, some kind of inspiration in that way.
I think it's it's cool to have big names in poetry. It's like every other art scene.
I like people. I'd like some paper people. They'd be purple paper people. Maybe pop-up purple paper people. Proper pop-up purple paper people. How do you prop up proper pop-up purple paper people? I hear you cry. Well, I probably prop up proper pop-up purple paper people with a proper pop-up purple people paper clip. But I'd pre-prepare appropriate adhesives as alternative to cheeky backup just in case paper slipped, because I could build a pop-up metropolis. But I wouldn't want to deal with all those paper people politics, paper politicians with their paper-thin policies, broken promises without appropriate apology. There'd be a little paper me and a little paper you. And we could watch paper TV and it would all be pay-per-view.
When I was really new to it, going to an open mic with a feature poet was really inspiring and would show me kind of what I could be doing if I kept at this.
If any of us poets one day did get a feature or are having one soon, we'd get an idea of how to do it.
It's nice to see how people can structure a 20-minute set, because it's very easy just to go up and do a poem. I find it very inspiring to see the way people put together a 20-minute set.
You get people who can do a very strong 20 minutes, but it's also about the whole links, the whole thing. Like, where do we take it next? Because it's very well, it's beautiful that we have the community, but that community should be able to support something bigger.
So this poem is actually an open beta, so feedback after would be lovely. So this poem isn't actually done yet, but I thought it might be useful to test it out, put it in front of people, get some feedback about what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. What people might want to see in future versions of this poem. Do you like the floral imagery? Let us know. Warning, this is not a review copy of the poem. This is very much a work in progress. We hope to release a final version soon, but even that will be subject to patches and updates. It's impossible to account for every little detail in a poem like this, in any poem, I suppose, for that matter. Do you like the commas in that last line? Let us know.
Well, the feature poet is going to be guaranteed a certain sort of quality.
They're two separate things, but I can see why promoters put them together. Because the person that you've heard of is going to be the draw, and you've got some assured quality. Some of the open mic, there's variable quality. Of course there is.
My gran always says that you have to give features, Jake, because otherwise you get loads of really rubbish poetry, and I'm like, that's fair enough, gran. But also, you want to nurture people.
You're going to go to an open mic and you're like, okay, so everyone on the mic might be shit. And it'll be fun for the sharing, but I kind of want to hear a good poem tonight. Oh, look, this person's on the lineup. That's great.
I confess more to strangers than to friends. I am discussing poetry and God in a cab with a driver from Bulgaria. If I recorded my conversations with cab drivers, I think I'd be closer to my dreams. I always ask them, where is home? as they drive me to a place that is supposed to be mine.
Some nights are bigger than the features, if I'm honest with you. Some nights have a bigger name than the features, but in order to keep that name, they need to have features. So sometimes it's just good to keep the reputation of a night.
I think it's important, if you're programming a night that has an open mic and a feature poet, it's about exposing the two to each other.
Features are good for the business model and good for the inspiration of the artists. Other artists or people, okay, I can do that, I'm going to write my first poem.
They're also great for, say you have a friend or someone who doesn't really know much about poetry or doesn't really like poetry, doesn't think they're going to like poetry. But you can say, oh look, but this really famous person who is also a rapper and you know who they are is doing this poetry night. And they'll think, oh that's cool, I would like to see them do the thing. And then they come to the night and they see the person do the thing. And they're like, that was really good the way they did the thing. And loads of other people do the thing as well. And they're also really good. I like poetry now, yes! And you've made another convert into our army that will eventually overrun the world. So that's good.
Blowing in my mind every time I rhyme, many wonders, many more signs. Thin line, true love is blind, thin line, many more signs. Come alive in the morning time in the sunshine, feeling fine, recline, sit back on the wine. In time, you'll see your sign. There's a voice in the wind blowing naturally, saying it's time. You speak your mind, speak out, and you will shine. Look around, everything's gonna be okay. Positive time, you speak your mind, speak out, and you will shine. So many wonders always. There's a natural mystic in the air, in tune with the words I say. Naturally, there's a natural mystic in the air, in tune with the words I say. So many wonders, many more signs. There's a natural mystic blowing my mind. So many wonders, many more signs. There's a natural mystic blowing my mind.
It's nice to have feature poets. I think it can equally work without.
I think it's a little bit more relaxed, you know, there's more people just like maybe trying out like new shit.
It's not essential, and sometimes I want it. And sometimes it's quite nice just to have everyone on the same level, just sharing new work.
I think features are important. I think though the problem with a lot of features is that they can be very entirely selected.
The feature thing kind of creates a hierarchy, and then sometimes there's a lot of pressure for people to get featured and everything, because that's what like brings them recognition and all of that stuff.
Don't get me wrong, some of the features are great. And it's really nice to be able to get to see people do their long 20 minutes, but when it's all a bit more level and the same, that's good.
That's what'll make tomorrow night fun. Costumes. Let's wear conversation starters stretched across our chests and riding up our armpits. It's socially sanctioned adult dress up with alcohol. I know, right? Down the bad habit hole we go. So SpongeBob is sneaking a pash with Minnie Mouse while Mickey selfies with Pocahontas. Jeez. Mickey's dripping with New World nasties. He follows his nose down her virgin valleys. Bestie is dressed as a Union Jack, also hilarious. 5! There's a countdown happening. How exciting. 4! I suppose she's British, which made more sense before I came to this country. 3! Oh, she's rolling up her shirt. 2! Lifting that flag up over her. 1! God save the Queen.
I think the London poetry scene is awesome. It kind of saved me. Like, I didn't know what I was doing with my life, and then I discovered poetry through the London poetry scene and just found this awesome thing that had existed that I knew nothing about, and was welcomed with open arms.
It's so alive, you know. London is just like full of poetry right now.
The London poetry scene is really diverse. There's loads of events. There's always something going on, and you're always missing an event when you go to another one. So that's kind of nice.
There's a lot of poetry nights, and there's a lot of really good, warm community stuff that really gets me through day to day and makes me very happy inside.
I kind of like the idea that in London you can kind of pick any day of the week and there'll be somewhere that you can go.
I used to watch the London poetry scene from afar before I lived in London. I think it changes all the time. I think it's incredibly diverse, and I think it can push itself to be more so.
I think people who go to open mics are often going because they are perhaps interested in a kind of YouTube slam culture that they might have accessed that way. Whereas actually I think what's happening in the scene in London is that now people who are more used to publishing on the page or writing for the page are feeling the confidence to read at places like open mics, and that then because of that they influence those people who are going for a kind of slam culture actually are changing their poetic style into something that is perhaps more, I don't know, I think there's something quite exciting happening in the London scene about the convergence of those two forms that perhaps isn't happening in, say, the American scene.
London, when I come back to you, it's you that makes me lose this smile. I guess I'm a robot. This is my natural habitat. The only question left for me, am I remote controlled or just wound up to the point where the elastic band is snapped? If you've got the answers, write them down for me. But don't send them via any screen. Open up your third eye and send them telepathically, because I'm sick of being a lone wolf, howling at the moon, asking for change to come, but not knowing what to do. See, if you're feeling the same, here's a hand held out for you. We can run until the clocks go back and we're standing on an unbroken rock waiting for Pangea to tectonic plate shift and the melting of the ice path. We can sit back, close eyes, spark spliff, and remember how connected this all really is. And remember how connected we all really are.
Having gone to other cities and seen their poetry scenes, I think the London scene is so much wider, it's so diverse, and it's got so much to it. It's got so many layers to it.
I would put a lot of money on saying the London poetry scene is probably unique in the fact that it's all-encompassing. All styles of writing and performance are welcome.
I think there's so much opportunity. There's so many collectives and stuff you can join. There's so many with apples and snakes. There's so many free workshops and things. I think it's absolutely an incredible infrastructure that I've found.
Whatever experience level, whatever level of education, whatever you're writing, there is a home for you. There is a place for you. And if you've got something that you're writing that is sincere, it's genuine, and it comes from a place which is true to you, then London is an amazing starting point. But it doesn't end there.
While the London scene might be great in comparison to other scenes, the poetry world in general is still really small, and I think that's something that we as kind of emerging artists have the power to kind of bring out.
To the man who never heard a word of poetry, could only comment on the dress and to the rest. I am not your manic dream pixie girl. I am not Zoe Deschanel eating an ice cream sundae with her fingers, offering you the cherry and giggling about how she's always secretly had a fantasy involving Chewbacca. I'm not going to wring you from the edge of anything. I'm not going to adorably teeter along a rooftop like a temperamental toddler with my arms out yelling, I'm flying. I'm not going to let you attempt to braid my hair. I do not fake that 1,000-yard stare in photographs to make me appear more interesting, and no, do not try to fix me.
The London scene is very accommodating, it's very welcoming. And I mean, I've only been here for a very short amount of time, but the number of poets that I've met here have been really inspirational to me, which I think is great.
I'm loving the whole London poetry scene. I'm so upset that I haven't got involved in this so many years before.
For a scene that covers quite a large area, it's surprisingly small as well. It's amazing how, and I've only been in this scene for a couple of years now, but I can go to most open mic nights in the city and at least see a face, at least see someone I know, someone I can sit next to and have a chat to.
I think the people are fantastic. I think Britain wants new writing, and London is a city that actually actively draws out new writing, will fund it, will give the opportunities to young people.
Kind of hate it for all the right reasons. It means that it keeps, like, when I was away from London and knowing that this is here and I love it, it keeps me here in a place that I can't afford to live in and in a place that I want to drink too much in, and in fact it's so welcoming and so enjoyable, and to see all the people that I've met through this, it keeps me here.
London's quite a big and scary place, and it can be a bit miserable and lonely and cold and dark and all the rest of it, especially in winter, but often in summer. And having that poetry scene there, and because it's so completely pervasive, there are open mic nights right across London, you know, north, east, west, kind of south. It's getting there, we're improving. It means that pretty much anywhere in London you are, there's, you know, it's like a rat. There's going to be a poet within about 15 metres of you, no matter where you are in London, and that's great.
The art to one side is a good place just for friendship, and the art back to the centre. I've seen some truly stunning stuff of every scope imaginable. If it's someone on stage speaking, then chances are it's happening somewhere on the scene, probably on a Wednesday.
It's a community, so it's not without its issues occasionally. I think it's been really, really interesting watching conversations about safe space and stuff happen. I think that's been really important. But I think it's generally one of the most supportive, am I allowed to say loving without sounding like a complete hippie? I think it's lovely. I think there's a lot of really, really good, kind people there.
Of the people that I've been fortunate enough to get close to, I think that is the heart of it. The real, like, genuine, emotionally intelligent people really are the beating engine of the poetry scene. There are other things that can come in which loses the point of it all. It can get much too competitive. It's not a business. It should be about the work and how willing we are to be open and how willing we are to share with people. And that's a beautiful thing. So really, underneath all of the things that I disagree with amongst the poetry scene, I think that it's got some real gems there which make it one of the best creative outlets in the world.